Okay, I'm going to ask you to put the headphones on and listen to a few minutes of sounds that were recorded during the pandemic.
Coronavirus is a national emergency.
A legal requirement to stay at home except for...
Items like toilet roll, hand sanitizer and pasta.
We will remove all remaining domestic restrictions.
It does not signal the end of the pandemic or a return to life exactly as we knew it before COVID struck.
Forgotten about all the uncertainty and not knowing what was going to be happening.
So it was definitely very strange.
Don't even go to a shop if you can avoid it. Stop socialising. Huge, huge change in everybody's life. It didn't just affect a few people, it affected everybody.
You were learning words like herd immunity, even COVID-19.
Post-COVID syndrome.
Shielding.
Isolation.
Bubble would be another one.
I called it the C word because I just didn't want to think about it.
Everybody was in the same boat, but it was affecting everybody in different ways, you know.
So before COVID came, I'd just gone into high school, so I was just kind of meeting new people and from all over Shetland that I'd never met before, and I was getting used to doing new subjects and learning new things. And then COVID happened, and obviously then I was at home and I didn't get to see anyone in person for a long time.
Additional support needs teacher with a huge workload. I was also caring for my mum at a distance as well, so there was a lot of pull. Very little time for me.
I went to stay with my mum in Walsall during lockdown. Although I'm in supported accommodation, it's just me. I don't share my accommodation with somebody, and I may have had to have seen less of the people who are supposed to support me, so it made me feel less alone. There was a worry of feeling lonely.
I was working full time, and unfortunately at that point I was becoming quite ill because I was suffering from a serious anxiety and worry. Not so much about the pandemic, there were lots of things happening at home. The whole thing just all appeared all at the same time. It was just a mess.
I work as a social care worker, first and foremost, and during the weekends I play in a couple of bands, so I'd be out most weekends playing, quite social, seeing an awful lot of people day to day, and then when the pandemic hit, it was just like a light switch going off. I mean, I still went to work because I was a frontline worker doing social care. So one of the interesting things with that was everybody was talking about everything completely grinding to a halt, but I was still going to my usual hours of work. So you're still seeing it, but like you'd go through Lerwick before or after a shift and it would be completely empty.
I had just started a new job, and you know, I had only ever done the commute to my office from my actual home probably about 5 times over that 6-month period.
I work for Nature Scott, and actually our organisation was ahead of the game in that they just set us up for what they call agile working, which meant we all had our laptops. Then as long as we could connect to Wi-Fi, we could basically work anywhere. It wasn't actually a negative experience for me, the whole COVID period. I saw as much or even more nature than I normally saw. I had a very rare bird turned up in my garden that should have been in the Eastern Mediterranean in the first, in April of 2020, Eastern subalpine warbler. Although I was having an okay time, obviously I felt very sorry for people who were physically affected by COVID.
2020 was a particularly difficult year, not just in terms of me having COVID or being a pandemic, but I also lost my mum.
We had to do homeschooling with the kids. That was a nightmare. But I feel like I got a bit of an education out of it. So they were, it was tough because you had to basically become a teacher. You had to, like during that time, to make sure that what they're learning and what you're trying to teach them from their curriculum, is right. You don't want to be teaching them the wrong way how to do something. So it was time consuming, but it was really, really good, but I'm glad it's over.
As schools were allowing pupils back in, then one member of my family caught it, the next one caught it, the next one, and there was 5 of us in the house at the time, and the 4 other residents in the house all caught COVID, and I didn't. So I remember just being the housemaid for the family, and I was delivering meals to doors and picking up plates with full mask and PPE and yellow marigold rubber gloves on, and carrying all the dishes through, and putting them on a boil wash in the dishwasher or in the sink, washing every dish that I could, and sticking to my own plate that I could eat out of and no one else did. And it must have worked, because I never caught COVID from that.
I had COVID twice and I recovered fine from it. But I know others that it affected, and they're still affected today with it. So it's just such a bizarre thing to try and wrap your head around how it can affect all these different people differently.
I started to become quite unwell and tested positive for COVID, as did my husband, and was unable to go to my mum's funeral, and was diagnosed with long COVID. Some of my symptoms were and are continue to be really bad.
I spent a great deal of the time in my garden, and the birds' songs seemed to got louder when I was there. Either that, there seemed to be more birds, they seemed to be singing happier.
It's really important, is no matter what you feel like, you find some joy, whatever that joy might be.
Wales is a tight-knit community. It's all like family, and like everybody knows you when you're passing them out walking. That was another thing, like I got out walking a lot at that time, which probably helped.
I like boundaries. I think that's what's attracted me to small islands, and the fact that COVID sort of imposed all these boundaries on my life, I actually found quite comforting. And as I say, very fortunate in that I live where I live and have access to the outdoors and everything I really needed.
There were so many things that changed in that time. I think a lot about young people and how much of their school and how much of the social aspect of their growth was lost for them.
I think it's definitely taken a toll on most of young people's even social skills. And whole coming out of COVID, it was really awkward meeting people in person for the first few times, because I hadn't seen anyone. I hardly knew how to interact with anyone other than my family.
Because of how long I was away for, and I came back and kind of reacquainted with just anybody, I was a bit like, I'm surprised you remember me, it's been that long.
It was a huge event that had mass impact on every aspect of someone's life, health, the economy.
One of the good things that came out the COVID side of things was that everything went online, which included support services like mental health, counselling and things like that. That went to Zoom instead of personal meetings. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know where I'd be.
We all realised that we could actually work from home and still maintain productivity. So I'm now a home worker. Before that, I was in the office 5 days a week. In terms of, impacts on the environment and people using transport all the time, that's obviously reduced. Now we don't have to fly to the mainland every time we have a meeting. We can do it by Teams.
Human nature is to be resilient.
Out of that life-changing experience comes new challenges, and at this point in time I'm looking forward to the future, a different future that I hadn't quite imagined for myself.
That time was good to reflect and gave me a lot of perspective on a lot of things. So feeling that much more mindful about, I suppose, life, I guess.
I feel more grateful in life, definitely. And maybe it was just a change in me anyway, but it's certainly the pandemic side of things and not taking things for granted.
My question would be to the others, did you find the fact that you couldn't socialise with other people a problem?
I got really, really comfortable just being at home all the time. So, you know, like that led on to not wanting to go out to so many parties, or if I was going out, maybe just a couple of friends, that kind of thing. I found I enjoyed that far better than big things with loads and loads of people. I found I enjoyed spending time with my family more because it was all you could do. I never didn't enjoy spending time with my family, but I enjoyed it more. I got to know them better.
I would call some of my friends during COVID, and I would play games with them on the internet over PlayStation, but it was totally different than being able to see them and go to their houses. And I think it's definitely taken a toll on most of young people's even social skills. And coming out of COVID, it was really awkward meeting people in person for the first few times because I hadn't seen anyone. I hardly knew how to interact with anyone other than my family.
I'd love to know what other people's experiences were during the pandemic. Like I said, at the beginning, I found myself very, very productive, and I'd just like to know what people did with their time.
I got to work on that book I published recently, which I feel if we hadn't had that time, it might have taken longer. The book may not have been published by this point, and now it's a bit of a success story, like the comic I made. So
spent time with my husband and my son. My husband isn't somebody that takes time off work, so for him to actually be at home was actually quite unique.
So I was wondering if anyone else had experienced any changes in their hobbies, either during COVID or after COVID, because I'm a musician. So during COVID, I found myself playing a lot more on my instruments and practicing. However, I didn't have anywhere to play at or people to play with. So it kind of had an impact on playing as a group, but I had practiced more and learnt a lot more.
I did exactly the same thing. I practiced my guitar, I played a lot. I missed playing out with my bands and things like that, but I just really focused on trying to get better on the guitar.
I joined a sort of international Pogues tribute band, the Pogestra, that happened, you know, as a result of lockdown, and basically it was a collaboration of people all around the world, and then somebody recording themselves, and then that was all put together in video, and that's still going, so that's a great legacy of COVID. And they're talking about having a live performance soon, so.
I got my camera out and spent some time using the time we were allowed to be outside to take photographs.
That was really when I got more invested into putting pen to paper, whether it was writing the stories, or even if I hadn't done more drawings at that time, I did eventually.
One of the things we certainly did as a family was linked in with Zoom first, and then that got to be hosted with WhatsApp, because that became more user-friendly, and we've never used it before, so now we're connected far more than we were previously. And I was just wondering if the rest of the group found that they're further away friends or relatives, that you actually connected more with them.
Sunday at 7 p.m. or something, I think, there'd be a Matthews family Zoom, and then we also did it with my folks as well, and my brother who's out in Australia. So it was actually, we had closer family contact during COVID times than we had done previously.
I kept in touch with my distant friends a lot more because you would schedule a call knowing fine well that nobody would be out and about doing anything. So I think, yeah, it's been one of the big benefits of COVID. You can't say there were too many of them, but certainly keeping in touch with friends and family in that way was a big improvement.
I wonder how others handled, like, keeping safe. I mean, I know it made me a bit more anxious.
I do have some friends whose anxiety and worry for their family and what they should be doing and Were they going to be a person who passed on an infection to somebody else and they were going to be ill and then they might die and then it was your fault, and it just went on and on and on in their minds.
Obviously trying to be careful if you knew that you were going to be around relatives that were vulnerable. It kind of gave you a whole new perspective about whether you needed to be in face-to-face contact with certain people at certain times.
There may be other people that are part of the project that are no longer able to do the things that they once were able to do, or don't have the same connections that they once had pre-pandemic. Maybe the question is, what new ways can we learn to connect with each other?
I do yawl rowing, and we did that every summer. So I was training normally twice a week out on the water, and then weekends going to competitions. I didn't do that at all during lockdown because it just wasn't possible. And the first thing that we did when lockdown actually stopped was to get together with the folk who actually worked on the yawl, and we vanished it. And that was the first social thing with people that weren't in the family that I did.
We've touched on a lot of things already, like the people using Zoom and people using WhatsApp and things like that. But I guess just calling up, you know, it can be a bit, it can kind of seem like it's maybe a blanket thing if you're just getting in touch over Messenger, but maybe giving them a phone call and arranging to meet up and things like that. During the pandemic, obviously we couldn't, but it just seems a bit more personal if you're actually picking up the phone or you're making a one-to-one connection with somebody.
COVID changed so many people's perspectives and motivations in life. So what was the one thing, either during COVID or after COVID, that you were going to do? What was the big change you were going to make, or the big leap you were going to make?
We decided, my partner of 35 years and I, that we would actually do something really, really positive through the pandemic. And as soon as we could, we decided we would get married.
For me, it was to make sure I was going to travel to different places and actually go and visit places. I planned to go and see this country, or also to go and see my sisters more. And one stays in Italy and one stays in Ireland. So that was one of the things I did. So what about you? What was it that you had big plans to do?
If I was morbidly obese, I'm hardly small now, but during COVID I took to fitness as a way, so out walking with the dogs an awful lot. This was my freedom. I actually contracted diabetes at this, you know, just a few months into type 2 diabetes, a couple of months into COVID. So I was trying to battle that at the same time while it was all going on, and so I found a focus in trying to get myself healthy, and I managed to lose quite a significant amount of weight and reverse the type 2 diabetes.